Generations of Rohingya Muslims worshipped here at the Arakan mosque. It took just a few hours to ensure they would never use it again. But at least here there is some trace of the uprooted people. A mile away, the mosque at Nasri and all the houses around it have been levelled. The Muslim presence has been erased. Several thousand people lived here until last June, when sectarian violence erupted. Rakhine Buddhist mobs descended on the area, killing and burning. The destruction here is a direct consequence of Burma's own history, but it has a universal resonance. The kind of language that I hear people using reminds me of things I've heard in Northern Ireland, in the Balkans, in Central Africa. At its heart, the idea that for one group of people to survive, the others must be driven out. The refugees from Nasri fled to the nearby Muslim neighbourhood of Ongmingala. Closer to the city centre, it's protected by the army and police, but it feels like a ghetto. In the mosque, refugees mix with the older population. Outside, they've begun to use the garden as a makeshift cemetery. These are the graves of people who've become sick and died in the past few months. Now, ordinarily they would be taken to a cemetery, but the people here tell me they're too afraid to leave this area, fearing they would be attacked. A few moments ago, a man came out of the crowd and handed me this small piece of paper, and it says, "Good afternoon, sir. Please rescue us from the tyranny of our government and Rakhine. Please help us." There is a real sense of isolation and fear here. What will happen if you go outside?
They will kill them and they're beating them. They mean the Rakhine will kill them, beating them if they go outside.
New refugee camps are appearing across the plains outside Sitwe. Rakhine Buddhists have suffered too, but most of the 100,000 plus displaced are Rohingya. Everywhere we heard testimony of violent attacks.
The Rakhine surrounded the village. They burned the mosque and the houses. We tried to put the flames out, and they shot. My son was shot in the neck. He was brought to the hospital. As we were leaving the hospital, they surrounded us. They were killing Muslims. They killed my husband. The police were just looking on.
When they burned the house, my mother was inside. She was sick and I couldn't lift her. I heard the sound of shooting and ran away. My mother was burned.
On the other side of the barricades, the Rakhine Buddhists have their own narrative of victimhood. They regard the Rohingya Muslims as illegal migrants who really belong in neighbouring Bangladesh.
So over 3,000 people were displaced on land.
The Rakhines are themselves an ethnic minority in Burma and see themselves as being trapped between Islam and the majority Burmese population to the south.
We are wedged the Islamizations, between Islamizations and Burmanizations. So that even our own government do not they recognize our needs.
The people you call Bengali,
yeah.
Where should they go now? Should they go back?
Yes, they are Bengali. They are not from our own country. They are from Bangladesh now. The Bangladesh, so they should go to their own country, own their nations.
If somebody is born here,
Yeah.
Are they still an illegal immigrant?
Their fathers and their forefathers are only illegal immigrants, so we cannot accept them.
They have to go.
Yeah.
In this border region, there's undoubtedly been illegal migration. But there's been a sizable Muslim presence here for centuries. Conflict between the two groups has deep historical roots. But under military rule, divisions were deepened. The state stripped most of these Rohingya of citizenship. it was the politics of discrimination that sowed the seeds of tragedy. Like here in Pyok To. In the eyes of their Rakhine neighbours, the Muslims here were turned into a non-people when the military regime took away their rights 30 years ago. Today, the Rakhine picked through the ruins of a Muslim village that was, until a few weeks ago, home to around 1,000 people. Desperate poverty has exacerbated the divisions between the two. And it's not as if the spiritual leaders of this devoutly Buddhist community have tried to calm the crisis. Far from it. Across the troubled areas, Buddhist clergy have been to the fore in demanding the exclusion of the Rohingya.
Around the world, there are many Muslim countries. They should go there. The Muslim countries should take care of them. They should go to a country with the same religion.
But you don't believe that they have the right to call themselves Burmese?
No, I do not.
The state has belatedly deployed troops to protect the refugees, and it's promised it will address the crisis over their civil rights. But in this overwhelmingly Buddhist country, there's little support for ending their exclusion. Even the human rights icon Aung San Suu Kyi has refused to champion their cause. Last June, as the violence was unfolding here and thousands of people were being driven from their homes, Aung San Suu Kyi was in Europe to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. There were many of her Western supporters who hoped then that she would make a forceful intervention, a strong statement condemning the violence against the Muslim community. But it never came. She's called for respect for the rule of law and in recent weeks called the violence an international tragedy. But the most powerful statement by any public figure came this week from the President of the United States.
For too long, the people of this state, including ethnic Rakhine, have faced crushing poverty and persecution. But there's no excuse for violence against innocent people. And the Rohingya hold within themselves the same dignity as you do and I do.
Obama framed the Rohingya crisis as central to Burma's future.
Your country will be stronger because of many different cultures, but you have to seize that opportunity. You have to recognize that strength.
Under growing international pressure, Burma's leaders, government and opposition, talk of a political solution. This man, Koko G, a key ally of Aung San Suu Kyi, listened to the President's speech. In the past, he's denied the Rohingya are a Burmese group. But he seems to be softening his stance. What was the main message you got from that speech today?
The most important point is the national reconciliation for our country between the different ethnic groups or different religions. So we need to maintain the freedom of speech or freedom of worship. That's the most valuable things for countries.
So there is a change in rhetoric, but the hatred between the groups is so deep, any big political moves would be met with fierce resistance. Nobody here believes the crisis is over, and as Burma approaches elections in 2015, the uncertainty will only increase. It is the great irony that growing freedom on a national level is turning this state into a prison for the Rohingya.